It is every parent's dream to have their child acquire an education which would mold them into independent individuals. This dream became closer to a reality for many in 2003 when the Free Primary Education Initiative was introduced in public primary schools. But with that came challenges of rising numbers of students attending school. This is a picture taken in July 16, 2015. That's a school by the Senator Obama Primary School in Siaya. Compare that to this following one. That's another picture of Lakewood Premier School in Utawala, and then compare that to Nachuri Primary School that's in Tiati. You sort of get the point, don't you? Almost 15 years after free primary school education was introduced, more children are being admitted to schools, yet the infrastructure is yet to be improved. Our education reporter Sharon Baranga looks at the state of the public schools in Nairobi in comparison to private schools, bringing into question the quality of education in the government-owned institutions.
In 2018, 15 years after free primary education was introduced by the government, the situation in most public primary schools in the county of Nairobi is dire. In this school, pupils have mastered how to use the limited space on their desks for both their textbooks and their exercise books. A desk that is meant to be used by 2 pupils is being used by up to 5 pupils. Space here is a luxury. A class that was designed to accommodate 40 pupils now has over 100 pupils. The not so lucky ones have to make do with makeshift seats, but have to hold their books. Others are forced to write from their thighs.
What we are having is poor management of the infrastructure that we have. And if you look at our neighbors in the region, you go to Rwanda, go to Ethiopia, and go to Tanzania, they have effectively managed what they call the shift school system. Because this is one of the approaches through which systems manage large numbers of children, because it's never written anywhere that children must come to school at 8 and leave at noon. You can have a more modified approach that ensures that you give to every child an opportunity.
The population of learners in Nairobi County versus the resources available is also straining the free primary education.
When FPU was being implemented in 2003, the number of children in school were about 6.3 million. We are now talking about 14 million children in the school. So the numbers have gone up. And in fact, by the year 2030, we're estimating that we'll be having about 24 million children in the schools. So this conservative model of planning for education, particularly around educational resources, whether they are teachers, whether they are classrooms, whether it is land, it is not going to work if government is not very radical in how it conducts its business.
Distribution of available resources is also a challenge.
Government has not been very proactive in terms of setting up of schools. As we speak now, there is an oversupply of schools in particular areas, and there is a serious undersupply of schools in certain areas. And you just need to look at the classical case of Nairobi. You go to places where you get schools within the heart of the city, CGHU, you've got the cases of Moi Avenue Primary School, Riverbank. These are schools without children completely. Now you go to a place like Kibera, or you go to a place like Pipeline, the whole of Pipeline, there's no single primary school. You got the whole of Donholm area, the whole of Donholm, Savannah, all the way. And then you're only talking about one primary school, which is Donholm Primary School.
Education is the only equalizer known in any society. But with crowded classrooms and a teacher-to-pupil ratio of 1:100 in most public primary schools, then it defeats the statement, as the quality of education offered in public primary schools is already compromised compared to learning that is taking place in private primary schools.
Pupils in private primary schools are living in a world those in public primary school may not be able to comprehend. Space is a right here. The number of pupils per class is limited. The teacher is able to pay close attention to pupils. Before the year 2003, basic education was a privilege in Kenya. Only those who could afford it made it to school, forcing many to drop out of school at different levels. Fast forward to 2003. The gates to public primary schools then opened to everyone. This was a dream come true for many parents who finally could have their children acquire basic education. The excitement was all over for the first time in the first term of the year 2003. Pupils simply walked to school without having to pay any fees.
What government needs to do is to standardize our schools. make all schools to be attractive. In fact, we need to reach a level whereby we go back to what we originally had, that the function of where you go to school is only told by one variable, and that is the distance. That there will never be a case whereby children will leave schools in their neighborhood to go to other schools elsewhere. So government has to think of standardizing schools. And how do you need to standardize schools? Make sure that schools have got what you call bare minimums of infrastructure, and it's not asking for too much.
2003 was not the first time free primary education was being started in the country. In 1971, the then President Jomo Kenyatta did away with tuition fees for the economically marginal areas. By July 1973, Marsabit, Mandera, West Pokot, Wajir, Tana River, Turkana, Samburu, Garissa and Lamu had free primary education. The government also built and supported boarding schools in these areas. A national feeding program was also launched. Despite the existence of free primary education by 1980, the schools witnessed many challenges that eventually contributed to its failure and the reintroduction of levies in primary schools. Sharon Baranga, NTV.